And here we are. Welcome, everybody. This is RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor at CriticalBlast.com. And with me tonight, you know him, you love him, David Taylor II, also known as DT2ComicsChat, the master of hashtag Flash Chats. David, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, you know, if I'm going to prep for a crisis, I want somebody who's an expert crisis prepper. And you've been on top of the Flash since the starting line, so to speak. So I was definitely wanted to have you on to kind of have this conversation. First of all, just in general, how excited are you for this crisis thing?
Well, I think this is, several things to answer that question. I think this is the CW peak. I think they're going to peak with this. I don't think they're ever going to top this.
It'd be hard.
I'm super excited because of Conroy. As soon as they told me that Conroy was going to be live, I'm like, I'm in. I mean, I was already in, but I'm 100% in. Number one. And number two, to see Brandon Routh get another chance to be Superman, because people don't realize what this means, okay? This is big screen to small screen integration. So I don't want to hear anymore about how they can't do it, about how it'll confuse people or how the movies are separate. No, they're not. If Ralph is the Superman he was in Superman Returns, and now he's Kingdom Come Superman, and they're saying that's the same character, same universe. So we're mixing universes, we're mixing, big and small screen with Conroy coming on. I mean, so many, once in a, I won't say once in a lifetime, that's a little too dramatic, once in a season or once in a show events are going to come together in this event. So I'm super pumped for it because we're never going to see anything like this again.
No, we're not. And I talked with Michael Guff a long time back when it was still Smallville, and asked him why this was the case. I mean, Warner Brothers owns everything, and I guess it was, at that time, it was almost 15 years ago. It was licensing issues. Somebody had a license to do the Batman characters on, the movie screens, and that meant they couldn't do television, even though they had cartoons, but they couldn't do live action. It's a totally different kettle of fish.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think Warner Brothers has, kind of been catching up, taking care of those contracts and making it so these things can happen. That's why we've got Superman on the big screen, and we've got Superman kind of sort of in Supergirl. And I noticed for a long time they never called him Superman. Did you notice? Did you catch that?
Yeah, when he first came on, yeah. Yes, I did.
Yeah, it was, he's always, this is, so you're super, just call me Clark.
Yeah, here's my
your super cousin.
But their focus on Supergirl has been trying to say that she's better than him in every way. She's stronger, she's faster, she's smarter, she's more of a hero, she's more popular. She is the one that they need, blah, 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 blah. That's kind of how they introduced him, which is backwards from the comics. But anyway, so I know he's getting his own spinoff, and so they'll probably have more of a chance to shine when it's just him and Lois again.
Yeah, now is that going to be that's going to be called Kal-El and Lois or Clark and Lois?
Clark and Lois, I think.
Yeah, they can't call it Lois and Clark because that mixes up with the other one.
Right. They're going to call it Clark and Lois, and it also depends because we're in that funny time where we're transitioning, and transitions are always rough. I went to school for music and we studied music history, and they said in every point of transition where you're changing from one musical style to the other, it's always a time of chaos and conflict. And some people are hanging on to the old, and a lot of people are fighting to birth the new. Well, that's exactly where we are in the comic book world. And so in today's world, it's kind of been established, particularly by these shows, that shows about heroes are now ensemble shows.
Yes.
And that the hero doesn't seem to be able to do what they did on their own. It's pretty much their team that, holds the whole thing together. And so it'll be interesting to see how they apply that dynamic to Superman. Like, will it be, Lois and Perry and Jimmy and all that, or, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
You're right there, because it's always been, hey, I'm the Flash, but I need, Vibe and Killer Frost and Cisco Science and Harry Wells, because I am not the hero, and it's been, I'm Arrow. It's going to be my way or the highway, except that I'm always in trouble and you guys are, saving me. So they do seem
Right,
to be undermining the hero of each show, the lead of each show. Except for Supergirl, they don't do that to her. So
right. Except for Supergirl, because she's fine all by herself. But the
yeah,
men definitely need, as far as they're concerned, the men need, all these teams. When Barry first becomes a Flash, there's a huge part of Flash mythology that has been minimized and overlooked, and that's called Flash facts. And what Barry Allen did as a scientist was he studied speed, and he learned how to use his speed in terms of the physics of the speed force in the real world, although we didn't know about the speed force back then when this happened. But he learned how to
right.
use the speed strategically, and he learned how to do different things with the speed, and he learned about velocity and just studied the science and came up with a bunch of flash facts. So he understood, what objects would do when they were in motion, and what would happen if he could vibrate through them, and a whole bunch of different things. And all of that is really missing here. So in the
It is.
very first, season, every time Barry needed to figure out how fast he needed to run, he would call Cisco. He'd be like,
Yeah.
Cisco, how fast do I need to run to do this? How fast do I need to run to do that? And that's not really Barry from the comics. So that's what I mean. We transition to this new age where the team needs the hero needs their team. And so, like I said, applying that to Superman is going to be interesting because he truly is in a class by himself, and no one else, can really do what he does.
Well,
So,
taking it back to the Flash being a scientist, I'll take it back even further than the first season.
uh
Let's take it back to the first episode of the first season, and even his first appearance in Arrow. But in that pilot show, when he's running up late to that crime scene, you remember how he got down on the ground with a pen and was examining, tire tread marks and what was left behind in it, and you had this Sherlock kind of thing where the equation was floating in the air above him as he's thinking and putting it all together. And I was like, okay, this is cool. He's a scientist. He's a forensic guy. We're going to see this all the time because he's smart. That just disappeared right after that. And again, it was all of a sudden, hey, I'm a police scientist, so I can do blood spatter analysis, but help me figure out how fast I have to run. And like 2 episodes later, it's like, this is dark matter anti-quark, and whenever that hits antimatter, we know we're going to get a proton spray of x 0.5 millimeters per second squared. Like, Barry, that's nothing you've studied. You're smart, but you're not a quantum physicist.
right. Okay, well, okay, there's a bunch of different things in what you just said. First thing
Yeah,
was, I agree completely that was so cool. I was like, Barry is doing some type of calculations in spatial geometry and some level of forensic and detective work. And we're kind of seeing that. I'm like, that is so cool. And I thought it was going to be a trademark of the show because really good shows always have trademarks that go along with the show, like a special effect, or like with Star Wars, it's like sound design, or like
yeah,
Gilmore Girls had, speedy, snappy dialogue. All the Whedon shows have that snappy dialogue. And but there's, when it's really tight shows, they've got a flavor, and I thought that was going to be it for the Flash. So I'm really sorry they got rid of that. Number one, but number two, kind of what happened was you have to kind of mix real world physics and comic book physics, and I was wondering how they were going to do that. And that answer so far has pretty much been Cisco, but they treat him kind of like a magic box. Like, Cisco, we need something. Okay, all right, just give me a few hours.
exactly. That's true. I mean, they can solve anything. If all of a sudden it's like Cisco, Joe West has come down with pancreatic cancer. He's going to die. Well, okay, hang on. Give us 2 hours. We'll figure this out, and we'll save him because it's Joe. They could save anybody except the world.
Right. Which also leads me to the third trope, which is what you just said, and that is that because I do movie rules and TV rules on Twitter all the time.
Yeah.
One of them is if you're a scientist in a sci-fi or comic book world, all of a sudden you're good at every science. That's true nowhere on earth, just like doctors have specialties. You need a pediatrician, you need an ear, nose, and throat. You need a cardiac specialist, you need a whatever you need. And science is generally the same way. People have specialties. But in, movie world and TV world, no matter what you do, all of a sudden, if there's a whole new discipline that's needed, all of a sudden you're an expert at that too. It's amazing. And Cisco does it all the time.
Exactly. And, it's like he's a technical person unless they need somebody medical, and Caitlin's not around because she's a doctor, she's a medical person. But if she can't do it, well, by golly, Cisco will figure out the mechanics of blood and bone, and he'll create a cure for the metahuman condition, and take away his useless superpower, which he can still do because they have a machine now that does what he did.
Right. Right.
They're all vibing all over the place now, but only if you're on Team Flash. That's not something that you would actually patent and then put out for high-ranking officials to get around the world quickly, because they don't deserve that kind of technology. It's just for us, no one else.
That's right. Plus, also with Caitlin, remember that Caitlin is not just a medical doctor; she's actually a medical doctor.
Yes.
She's been in situations more than once where she's had to deal with people with metahuman powers, and she's always able to come up with those answers too. So, I mean, they always kind of have that morphing thing going on with the science people, to where chemistry or physics or human biology or genetics or just whatever you need. It's just like they studied every subject.
And with Caitlin, she's the first one that they've shown now that had metahuman powers pre-existing the dark matter explosion, and then they never touched on that again, because it was all this is what's introduced the impossible to the world, is this metahuman explosion. But now that we know that superpowers existed before that, the Speed Force existed before that, and I'm on record as I'm not a huge fan of the Speed Force. I like it being a metahuman ability. It was an invention of Mark Wade for some reason that there's a speed force out there. Well, now if there's a speed force, then there's a force for everything out there. It just if there's one, there's more. The food force out there.
That's the way it is in the comics now. They have different forces along those same lines, but that's kind of what happens once you introduce a concept. Eventually, they're going to multiply it and expand it. But I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. It's just so funny you should say that, because I was like, people keep forgetting that Caitlin didn't have powers until Barry did Flashpoint. And that's what shifted their realities to give, because remember that she was tested for the metahuman gene by one of the Wells, and she came up human. So she did not have her powers until Barry did Flashpoint. Then he changed the past. But when he changed that past and she got her Frost powers, we eventually find out that in that new time stream, it was actually her dad's experiments on his whole family, because she's been Frost when she was a very little girl.
Go ahead. Well, Barry's trip to the past didn't go back far enough to impact Caitlin's childhood. Caitlin's childhood was untouched because Barry only went back. Well, maybe he went. It depends on how much older or younger she is than Barry, but I get the idea that they're close to the same age.
Well, it's kind of what Jay said in the conversation about breaking the teacup and never being able to put it together quite right again. Here's where I thought they were going. If Caitlin's father is the icicle, I thought that was going to bring in the whole Justice Society.
Well, they brought in the Justice Society. That's the other thing that happened.
Well, I mean,
that happened in Legends.
What'd you say?
That happened in Legends.
Yes. No, I know that. I meant on the Flash. No, I know they brought them on Legends. Well, they brought versions of them. Let me put it that way. But I mean, I thought, like we've seen, Jay Garrick and the Icicle and that whole thing. I thought we were going to see all of them on the Flash, and I thought it was going to be much more of a tie-in in terms of, because here's what I thought was going to happen on the Flash. I thought that Jay or Max Mercury was going to be Barry's mentor for at least 2 years. And it was going to be an official passing of the baton. But what ended up happening was Jay Garrick only makes like guest appearances, and he hasn't really personally trained Barry. And so, anyway, I thought we were going to get so much more of that backstory and see all of them kind of on the Flash and all of them kind of passing the baton to their
Yeah.
younger counterparts, Silver Age. And then because we knew that Flash was going to, which is what everybody's speculating about now, everybody kind of believes that Flash is going to pass something maybe to Nora, or maybe they're going to introduce a new version of Nora, or maybe they're going to introduce Impulse. And also, I keep saying, why do they keep skipping over Wally? But we're jumping ahead,
Yeah.
But yeah, we have
the first Wally.
Yeah, we have to talk about what's going to happen after Crisis, because everybody's kind of racking their brain. But
well, we can assume that the world might get rebuilt, but let's get on to Crisis here, because that is supposedly what we drew everybody in to talk about. We'll start with Supergirl and the Crisis mentions on that. Now, of course, last week, every single CW show ended with Harrison Wells, Nash Wells, talking with the Monitor. I half expected Riverdale to close with that scene.
Yes, it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. But we do see the Monitor's talking to Lex, who's been playing chess with somebody that we did not see. We assume someone was there, but we don't know who it was. Which brings up the question, first of all, is Lex really that smart that the Monitor needs him to help save the universe?
Well, remember what Lex Luthor does. He always finds a way, even going back to the Chris Reeve movies, he finds a way to put himself in a position to have access to whatever the resources and technology are of whatever's happening. So I don't know if it's a matter of intelligence. I do know it's a matter of maneuvering, because Lex is really good at what he does, but he's also a bit of a carnival barker. He's a bit he has enough showmanship in him normally to talk his way into whatever's going on, and enough money and resources to keep his finger on the pulse of things that are going on. So I don't necessarily know if his involvement in events is solely because of his intelligence, but it would be because of his desire to be sure he can capitalize on whatever goes down, because that's the core of Lex Luthor. He's a brilliant human, but he hates that metahumans exist. He hates that other people with powers greater than his exist. That's why he's obsessed with Superman, at least from the comics.
Yeah, I think the best take on Lex Luthor I ever read was one where it wasn't so much that he was obsessed with somebody being more powerful than him, but that he was just simply very xenophobic. He's very distrusting. There are aliens among us. We should be concerned, and everyone's just treating it like, oh, cool, we have an alien, when this could be turning out to be a serious threat. And I'm the only one smart enough to see it.
Right.
he has the hubris. He has the inferiority complex, but it's so subverted inside of him that he doesn't see that he has it. He sees it as a different reason, which gets down to the whole thing that nobody ever really sees himself as the villain. Everyone sees himself as the hero trying to save somebody from a situation that they think is dangerous.
That's right. That's right. And also, the season on Supergirl, it's been about another test of Kara's character and her telling the truth to Lena. And, if they do have her die in Crisis, that might be part of her motivation. Like, maybe I need to prove my integrity, or maybe I need to prove again that I really am a hero, I'm a good person. That always seems to be a big deal to her. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, we've seen a little bit of what's going to happen in Supergirl. I mean, obviously we saw the Lex Luthor thing. And then, of course, when he said that he can put anyone in checkmate, my ears immediately pricked up, when he kept using that word, because I was like, well, checkmate was the pre-Task Force X agency that was established, and it was a post-crisis agency.
Right.
Made me kind of wonder if there might be, turning the DEO or making an alternate version of the DEO that would be the checkmate group, where we get Amanda Waller and Argus running underneath all of that.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a very Lex Luthor thing to do. What Lex wants to do is, like, any global capitalist, He wants to be there in the aftermath of disaster to pick up the pieces, to buy everything cheaply, to set things up the way he would want them to be set up, and to
Yes.
put himself at the top of the chain, because he knows if anything happens or whatever happens, anybody that survives is going to be devastated. And so he's going to swoop in and say, well, we've already got a system in place. And he's going to do the same thing that General Ross did in Avengers and Civil War, and start talking about the damage that the metas cause and why he needs to be in charge and why they need to be regulated. And he's going to have all that in place. So whatever happens, whoever survives, he's going to swoop in and put himself right in that position. That's what I mean. That's the Lex Luthor way.
Yeah. Yes, it very much is. And I can definitely see him getting into the government, probably getting a pardon. I'm surprised that Lena's not looking for his body. I mean, she did shoot him and walk away, and there was like never a funeral, because right afterwards the Monitor swept in and kind of saved him from death. But everyone's talking about him being dead. You lost track of the body if you think he's still sitting in your office rotting, like Jason Blossom. Just
Yeah, well, if you notice, that's another very common comic booky trope. The reason that anybody ever survives is because the villains never shoot the heroes when they have them captured. They come up
exactly.
with a crazy scheme and then they leave the room. That never fails. Oh, so,
that buzzsaw is going to cut him in half in about 20 minutes. Let's go get some burgers.
right. That never fails. I mean, it was campy in the Adam West Batman, but it's become a trope. I'm like, just shoot him in the head. You got him right there in front of you. Don't tell him your plan. Don't strut. Don't brag. Just kill him.
Yes.
But that rarely happens, and so
I did it 35 minutes ago.
right. You got to leave some kind of loophole for the hero to come back. So
Yeah. Also in Supergirl, in the Crisis trailer, we're seeing that very iconic scene of the Superman cape on a staff and Lois holding Superman in her arms. That's Doomsday. That's the death of Superman right there. Now, I feel the wind kind of taken out of that one, because we already know there's going to be a Clark and Lois series next season. So I don't feel that much suspense over this particular scene.
I was going to say, Brandon Routh Superman will probably die. I certainly hope they don't introduce Doomsday, because this is not enough time to
Oh no.
give that epic battle any kind of meaning. And I'm also sorry that we're not going to see Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel was a key player in the Kingdom Come, graphic novel comic book series. So
Yes.
they're probably going to do a whole bunch of things with twists and substitute other characters for those players. But I mean, that is the iconic image. But I just don't see them introducing Doomsday or Captain Marvel, which everybody knows that Captain Marvel is my favorite tie with Batman, and I'm really sorry he won't be a part of this, because he should be.
They might introduce Doomsday and even Captain Marvel, but it wouldn't be any kind of a buildup. I think what we're going to see is a lot of different iconic scenes from different stories in the DC universe, other than actually Crisis on Infinite Earths, ironically. Because
it's a lot of fan links, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to do Crisis right, you'd have to have a Netflix series to handle it all.
That's absolutely right.
So I don't obviously that death is not going to stick. I don't think we're going to see the death of. I don't even think we're going to see the death of Oliver, although it would be really cool if he came back as the Spectre now and then.
Now, I was going to say, that's what I think the deal was he made with the Monitor, that he would somehow put himself as kind of some sort of guardian, some sort of fighter, some sort of monitor himself, so that if there were ever threats to the Earth from parallel Earths or dimensions or timelines, he would have to spend all of eternity kind of vigilant, guarding them in a vigilant kind of a way. And the
Right.
reason I think that's his end is because that gives him maximum pain, because my goodness, do they hate Oliver Queen.
Of
They
course they
hate
do.
Oliver Queen. Lord have mercy, they hate him. And so they'd have to find a way to end him to where he's still suffering, but also to where Amel can come back for some guest spots.
Yeah, I think the person who should hate Oliver Queen the most right now is Felicity Smoke, or Felicity Smoke Queen, because with the first episode of Arrow this season, I thought, okay, this is cool. We're going to be questing across the multiverse to find pieces for what's probably going to end up being this antimatter tower device that the Anti-Monitor was supposed to be building. But instead, he only is on an alternate Earth once. It's Earth 2 of all places, so, which means we've lost Harrison Wells. Nobody's talking about that. But not only that, he's walking around our Earth now, hopping around different countries, and the man doesn't pick up the phone and says, "Felicity, I'm on a mission. We're doing this. I'm okay." No, she's just totally left in the dark with a baby, and he's not going to tell her what he's doing. So,
well, once again, they're going to write Oliver to do the most jerk-based things possible. He's always going to be kind of caught up in his own mind, his own thoughts, his own mood. It doesn't seem to be able to mature enough to come out of himself long enough to recognize the impact of his actions on the world around him. And that's the lesson they supposedly have him, quote unquote, learn every year, but he doesn't. He always kind of goes back into the cave in his mind and does stuff that's kind of oblivious. Like he's oblivious to the ones he loves the most, because that's how they love to write Oliver Queen, to try to make him as much of a jerk and justify his self-hatred.
oh, well, sounds a lot like a certain Bat person, and that would be the next chapter in the Crisis that we're going to be coming up in, which is going to be the Batwoman episode, moving that to Monday night. Now, with her participating in Crisis, and this being her first season, and she's only 7 episodes in, maybe that long, and we know she just started the whole thing in the first episode, and it's a continuing adventure that's been happening. When the heck did Elseworlds happen? Because we already know did Elseworlds happen to this Batwoman, I guess would be the correct question.
Right. Well, that's the other thing about the way they kind of melded the universe. That was the most confusing thing to me when the Batwoman pilot first comes out. As soon as they started talking about how Bruce is gone or Bruce is left or whatever, they lost me, because I'm like, yeah, no, he's not, and no, he wouldn't. Batman would never do that. So, right, all that we're talking about, Batman would never up and leave. He wouldn't just abandon anything and all that. So
they did the same thing with Birds of Prey when it was the WB network. You remember that series?
Right. Yes, I do, because what's her name? Ashley Scott's going to show up as Huntress.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She
got a cameo, so it'll be interesting to see. Like you were saying before, I hope they don't do it to where it's just like a glimpse or like a scene or like we get a flash of these characters. Do you remember when Barry first time traveled and he saw those different things as he was running by?
Oh, we were pausing our DVDs like crazy to see what was going on.
Yeah. We saw Supergirl. We saw Connor Hawk. We saw the Flash Museum. We saw Barry in jail. We saw Killer Frost. We saw Grodd. It was just incredible the first time we saw that. I'm hoping that is not what's going to happen here, where we just kind of see these actors kind of like, in a scene as it flashes by. I hope they actually get to interact and, talk or whatever. So if that Huntress is here, that whole thing about Batman abandoning Gotham and Catwoman was pregnant and, blah, 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 that whole thing, now like Batman, he's not just going to run away or whatever. And when Batman found out about Damian, he did the best he could. So it'll be interesting. They play that up. But again, they're writing Bruce, at least on the CW, in the same kind of way that maybe he's abandoned some of his responsibilities. So I don't know exactly where to place this version of Batwoman. like what she has and has not experienced in terms of the version of Batman she's dealing with.
Right. Well, the version of Batman that she is dealing with, let's talk about that too, because in the trailer, at least one of the trailers, we see Bruce recognize her, and she recognizes him. Now, that's the Kevin Conroy version, who's all up in the exoskeleton armor because he's been so beat up throughout his career.
Right.
But that recognition carries with it the fact that he must be an absolute doppelganger of the Earth One Bruce Wayne.
That's
Perhaps
right.
older, but that's him.
Well, that exoskeleton stuff is straight from Kingdom Come.
Oh, it
So
is, yes.
they're obviously borrowing heavily from Kingdom Come with Ralph's costume. That's the Kingdom Come outfit, and Bruce being in that exoskeleton. So that's what I meant when I said, you can't tell that story without Captain Marvel,
No.
or Wonder Woman. That's the other thing. But anyway, yeah. So it'll probably be a big exposition scene where we kind of get all the missing information up to this point in terms of, on Earth One, you did this or you did that. And he'll be like, that's not how it happened here. And blah, blah, blah. It'll probably be a scene like that where they kind of go at each other, but it ends up being an exposition kind of scene, is what I'm thinking.
I think you're probably very much onto something there. They're probably going to tell us a lot of stories that we haven't seen, and we're just going to have to hear about them and hope that we get to see how they play out later on. But I'm not ruling out that they couldn't bring in Captain Marvel, the one who shouts Shazam all the time, or they couldn't bring in any other stories, because Mark Guggenheim has said that there are characters that have not been announced. We'll see them all right after the second chapter. And we know that the Monitor has told the team assembled that there are 7 heroes across the multiverse who can save the multiverse. Well, we have to assume that they're not the ones he's talking to right there. So that rules out, Supergirl, Flash, Arrow.
Okay, now that sounds like a direct reference to the 7 Soldiers of Victory.
Bingo. Yes. I honed in on that number myself. I don't know how many there were in the original Justice League, but when he said 7 heroes, I know it's the 7 Soldiers of Victory. I can feel that. Now, I don't know if it's going to be, the Star Spangled Kid and Stripesy and the Vigilante and the Shining Knight and all that, but I think that there'll be at least 7 heroes who might take that name, even if they say it in jest once. We're going forth. We're the 7 Soldiers of Victory. Let's go in it.
Well, the pre-crisis team was actually 8 when you counted Wing. It's Crimson Avenger, Star Spangled Kid, Stripesy, Vigilante, Shining Knight, Green Arrow, and Speedy. And then also Wing is the unofficial 8th soldier. So that would be super cool if they have Oliver as a part of that team, or because they did have, and we have to reach over here into Smallville world and also Stargirl.
Yes.
Because,
who's getting her own series on Netflix now.
Right. Now, the DC universe is different from the CW universe, which is confusing and gets on my nerves, but they're not quite the same thing.
Right.
But if we're going to see the actual 7 Soldiers, if we're going to see Sylvester Pemberton, then I would hope we would see Stargirl at some point, because it would be really, really, really cool if both Oliver and Roy are part of that group. And maybe
Stargirl
has
appeared in the Legends of Tomorrow.
Yes, and she appeared in Smallville.
And that would be a great time to bring her. If they bring her in right now, that's a great way to introduce people to and get them excited about the Netflix series.
That's right. See, that's what I'm trying to see. I'm trying to pull the camera back and see their end game. Are they trying to literally merge all the worlds just in the CW verse or across all the shows?
Well, Marvel has managed to have television, Netflix streaming, and their movies all inhabit the same universe. So there's no reason why Crisis could not, in fact, do the same thing.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Because if that's the case, then I want some crossovers with Titans and Doom Patrol on the CW That would be just outstanding.
I love Doom Patrol. I'm disappointed. I've only seen the first season of Titans, and I was disappointed that it was so dark. I mean, Jason Todd is a bigger psychopath than Damian Wayne,
Uh-huh.
at least in that book. I mean, he's beating up cops for crying out loud,
Oh,
and
it's
that's
super
just
dark.
not something that should happen.
Oh, it's super dark. Titans is super dark. They really need to rename it Dark Titans because it's not really the folks that we know.
No, it's definitely not from what I've seen. Um, this week, the cliffhanger, of course, of Crisis is going to happen in The Flash, and that is where it all began. The last 15 seconds of season 1, episode 1, is that historic newspaper clipping
Right,
from the future. So we
right,
were counting down 10 years to Crisis, and now here it is early
right.
because of Nora and the time stream.
But here's the thing that's missing. If you remember in the Flash season 1, everything about the time capsule room and Gideon in that paper was known and being used by Thawne.
Yes.
Thawne always knows more than he's telling. And so the question then becomes, was he trying to compress the time to get it down to like where it is now? Is that what he was using Nora for? And instead of just escaping, was he trying to hasten Barry's disappearing during the Crisis in the Red Skies thing? Because he always knew what was up with that paper and that event way before Team Flash did. And I feel like that Thawne needs to be a key player here. I feel like that he's actually the one that would have the most answers, all things considered. Do you see what I
Well,
mean?
do you remember his last words the last time we saw him?
He said something like, "I'll see you in the next crisis" or something.
I'll see you at our next crisis.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I really
So
feel like really needs to be central to the action here.
I'm sure he will be. I think we are going to see him because of course, like you said, he's on top of this whole crisis thing. He knows it's been coming. He's prepared for it, and he might have hastened it down, maybe because somewhere before crisis, but after this point in time, Barry would have done something that stopped him in some measure or another.
Right, because remember, that's what the whole initial particle accelerator explosion was about. He moved it up by 5 years. Barry was going to become the Flash 5 years later. So Thawne comes back in time and triggers it 5 years before it would have happened, so that Barry can become the Flash sooner, so he can start siphoning that speed and get back home. That was the
Right.
whole plot line of season 1. So that's what I mean when I say I don't really see how he's not the master manipulator here on some level in terms of moving this event up for whatever purpose that would serve for him, because there was
Yeah.
a whole can of worms opened with the negative speed force and Nora tapping into it. And there was just a whole bunch of stuff in terms of Flash mythology that was just kind of touched upon, but it
Oh
could be
yeah.
blown open right here.
There's so much more that can be done with Flash. Now, in these trailers, we've seen Iris get eaten up by the wave of antimatter.
Yeah.
My money is that this cliffhanger, because we're gonna have to wait till January for the last 2 parts of this crossover. I think this Flash episode ends with him chasing a tachyon and having his body disintegrate. I think that's where it's going to end.
Well, everybody's been saying, and that's probably true actually, because we've seen that scene already. But everybody's been saying, you have to notice the monitor's words. He said, Flash must die. He did not say Barry Allen must die.
True.
So it's entirely possible that Jay Garrick will somehow get repowered and give his life, maybe take some, V9 or whatever, or 90s Flash, John Wesley Shipp again, he might die. He might push Barry out of the way. Or, so it doesn't necessarily have to be Barry dying. He just said Flash must die.
And there's any number of Flashes that could be brought in here.
That's right.
Even a time remnant Flash, for all we know.
I was thinking about that too. Plus, also, what people are really thinking is going to happen is that John Diggle is going to reveal himself as John Stewart and become Green Lantern.
That would be nice. I would very much like that. That's probably Stewart's probably his middle name, John Stewart Diggle.
Yeah, we've been waiting on that for a while. I remember it was teased last year because when original Flash shows up, he's like, John, where's your ring? So we know that maybe on his Earth, Diggle is Green Lantern.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And we might get to see that version of Diggle in the Crisis here.
Well, it's about time. We've been waiting on it. We've been waiting on it for years now. So
it may be in a flashback because remember, Flash 90's world is destroyed. I don't know where he's hanging out between Elseworlds and his appearance on Crisis this coming week, because he doesn't have an Earth to go back to. He'd have to be telling them what happened on his Earth, and we'd get to see John Stewart flashback, and maybe some of the other heroes in a 90s style of costuming. I don't know who that would be.
But see, that's also why once Nash introduces the idea of Eternium, if you know anything about Eternium, it's the metal
Rock of Eternity.
The Rock of Eternity, right, which is where the Wizard Shazam, went to live once he got killed and stopped being a physical being and became a spiritual being. And the Rock of Eternity is also the portal to any place in time that the Marvels fly in and out of. So that's what I mean when I say I also didn't understand why we would get such a direct reference. Like, why does he need Eternium? How does it figure in that? What does it have to do with? So I don't know. I hope we get something,
Let's talk about that Eternium just a little bit here, because Nash is looking for Eternium deposits because that's tracing the Monitor. First of all, we have that great big plaque, which we assume is Eternium. He knew where to dig because Allegra showed him where the Eternity lit up with the ultraviolet rays and all that. Though looking at them, and I don't see anything familiar in them. I don't see interlac symbols. I don't see versions of DC hero insignias, and yet it was a combination that Nash knew how to enter when he looked at it and was told that the knowledge is in you. He pressed them in a certain sequence, and that's what opened the door to the light, where of course he's going to become Pariah now,
right,
rather than the old-fashioned way. But before even that, and it was almost a throwaway line, there were small traces of Eternium on Iris. And we never figured out why. Why are there traces of Eternium on, or perhaps in or around Iris?
Well, if you know from the comics, you know that Iris West is actually from the future.
Oh, yeah.
And she gets killed by Reverse Flash, and and then Barry's going to get married again, and then Thawne comes to kill his new wife, and Barry says not again, and Barry actually kills him and gets put on trial for murder. So they got that whole arc. But Iris gets rescued and taken to the future where she's actually from. And then Barry ends up going to the future, and they reconnect, and that's where they have the
Tomato twins.
Right. So I've
We're
always
gonna need a lot more diapers.
That's right. Which he said when he came out of the Speed Force.
Yes.
That was one of his mumblings, one of his gibberish. That, oh man, we're gonna need some more diapers. So
and that's the one that hasn't happened yet.
Right. I'm thinking maybe they're leading up to that storyline, but because that's the biggest wink that Iris is time displaced. Let me ask you this. I don't have a picture in front of me right now. Those markings, how many of them were there? Because that's the first thing I thought it was interlac, but I'm like, no, that's not quite that language. How many of those markings are there?
Oh, there were about 9 of them, I think.
Okay. Because my second thought was that they might be the 7 deadly sins. But there's more than 7 of them, so I don't know.
I think there's more than 7 of them up there.
Yeah, I don't know if
it's close to 9 or 10 of them.
Right. But yeah, they reminded me on some level of all the Kryptonese stuff we used to see with Clark on Smallville.
Oh yeah.
Just about everything he dealt with had some type of Kryptonian etchings on it. It wasn't quite Kryptonian though, that language, we've seen that enough to recognize it. But I hope it has more significance than just kind of his entryway into wherever he went. But I'm still not sure if they're going to tie all that together with Iris's, comic book storyline, and if she's going to die or if she's just going to disappear, or
Yeah.
maybe, or what if the Monitor, brings her parents? What if we end up seeing her real parents? What if we have a big emotional scene where Joe either is told he's not really her dad because he didn't know, or maybe he did know and he's been keeping it from her all this time. Oh my goodness.
That would be very emotional. I don't think
That's
she'd ever
gonna
be
break the
able to
internet.
trust him again.
No,
But
she wouldn't know. Who would know what to do with that?
well, there's a very interesting tie-in to the trial of the Flash with the Flash and Green Arrow,
Hmm.
because when he is tried for the murder, and it was murder because nothing happens that fast without premeditation in the Flash's world.
Hmm.
Uh, the Justice League is voting on whether or not to retain him or kick him out. And in that issue of Flash where the Justice League did this, it was 3 up and 3 down, and Superman was the tie-breaking vote when he arrived, and it was to keep him on a probationary basis to see how the trial went. One of the people who voted to keep him, thumbs up, was Green Arrow. Now, fast forward several years, and you have Justice League cry for justice, and Green Arrow premeditatedly puts an arrow into Prometheus to kill him because
Right.
he did all this to the Justice League, and we know he's going to come back and do it again. Barry's the one who tracks down Green Arrow with Green Lantern and is like, I never liked you. I don't know what Hal ever saw in you. And I was like, damn, you're a jerk, dude. This guy voted for you when you committed murder.
Right.
So it was a very interesting, sanctimonious Barry Allen that we saw there, I thought. I don't think that this Barry would do that to this
No,
Oliver.
I was going to say the CW versions are much better friends, and they've been there for each other from the beginning, at least of Barry's career in this universe. And that's just not them.
Speaking of Oliver, as we're kind of wrapping up here to the end, this is the last year for Arrow. The Arrow comes. That is it. A superpowered Kryptonian. We have hypersonic speedster. We have all these people with powers. Why do you think it is that Green Arrow is the key to saving the multiverse? The Monitor has come to him.
Why do I think that he's the key? I think he's the key because he understands sacrifice. He understands atonement. That's not really what Clark or Barry do. He understands sacrifice. He understands atonement. He understands paying for sins past, that sacrifices must be made. And because, if you think about Oliver's trajectory, he's always been willing to put himself in danger, sometimes bullheadedly so, and sometimes going overboard with it. But he's always been willing to do that almost faster than anybody else. It's not really a threat when you're a Kryptonian because very few things are a danger to you. And Barry had to mature to the point to learn how to sacrifice because remember what he did for his first 3 seasons was try to change the timeline, trying to fix his mistakes. And then
Yeah,
he had to grow
and
to
he
the
did that
point.
he did that multiple times too in a crossover with Green Arrow. I mean,
Right.
because Vandal Savage kept destroying him, he had to run back, fix it again, run back, fix it again. So
That's
who
right.
knows how many times he altered the timeline
That's
with each
right.
one of those little.
Remember that Nora altered it 52 times when she was here. I'm still not over that.
Exactly.
So I'm saying with flashes, they think differently. But Oliver is the one who, again, is always willing to put himself in danger the fastest, who understands sacrifice. And the Monitor might be angling to get him to be the Spectre or angling to get him to be a Guardian because Oliver would do it.
True.
And, like I said, Clark might not, or he might not be able to, or, he wouldn't leave his kid, and Barry would be trying to find a way out of it or around it, or Cisco would. But Oliver would be the main one that would be free to go and kind of morph into another form or another way of fighting.
Right. And Oliver has to die, from what we saw at the end of Elseworlds, because the balance had to be maintained. He saved someone's life who was supposed to die, so he's going to have to be the one to take their place.
Right. That's right. And he
Um,
would be accepting of that fate the fastest.
Now, I know that the Crisis is going to wrap up in January with episodes of Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow. I'm kind of hoping that when it picks up in January, it picks up with Legends and ends in Arrow. I think that would be the proper way to do it. I'm sorry, I enjoy Legends, but Legends is its own thing. It's a completely different beast from the other shows. I don't think it has the gravitas necessary to carry the finale for Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think Legends is going to be the place where it's going to be wall-to-wall Easter eggs flashing so fast you can't tell what they are.
Right. I think that's it wraps up on Legends on January 14th.
So it is going to wrap on Legends.
Yeah, Arrow is right before that. And then January 14th. Now, I really think that Amell and crew deserve a lot of credit because they were first. They're the ones that really opened up the CW superhero thing. That's why they call it the Arrowverse.
Yeah.
And I still wish the storylines had done better by Oliver Queen as a character. But in terms of what Amell has given to the character and to the show and establishing all this stuff, I think he deserves a lot of credit and a lot of propers. But I also think that it's kind of the beginning of the end. I don't think they have enough steam to go, 8 more years with 5 or 6 more shows. I think they might try. But again, I really think this is the peak. And I think with Oliver being gone, I think people are going to realize that the whole anchor of the Arrowverse not being there is going to make more of a difference than they think it will. I really do.
I don't see Clark and Lois and Batwoman being the anchors. If they really wanted to get an anchor show on here, they would bite the bullet and get whatever needed to be done and do Justice League.
Yeah. Well, see, I've talked about this a lot on Twitter, but this is what happens when you go out of order. Superman was always first. Superman is normally regarded as the one. He wasn't the first costume superhero, and he wasn't the first person with powers because there were superheroes that were definitely in motion. But Superman is the one that kind of made the difference and ushered in what we call the underwear on the outside age.
Yeah.
And
yes.
So he always gets that credit. So we screamed about it in Smallville all the time because in Smallville, Superman was the last one to activate in costume. Everybody else had their powers and everybody else was out there fighting. And even at the end, Chloe comes back and says that Wonder Woman and Batman are out there. So they did it backwards on Smallville, where Superman was the last to activate, which really did not sit well with me. And so I'm saying
he's
that
supposed to be the inspiration.
That's exactly right. So I'm saying that to say, since that is not the case in the Arrowverse started very, very dark. It started with a very, very dark show, and it's gotten darker.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't bring in someone that's traditionally as light as Superman or whatever and have it have the same impact because it doesn't even fit with the vibe.
I'll say this: they did the same thing in the DC movies because Man of Steel is obviously Batman came first because we know that he's just been around for so long from everything that's in the Batcave, but yet he's going to take on Superman and Batman v Superman. So and since Man of Steel obviously was the debut of Superman to the world, Batman's been at it for years already.
That's right. That's right. So and speaking of Smallville, I'm also wondering what's going to happen with that cameo because everybody wants to know if we're finally going to get to see Welling, in the suit or not.
Yeah,
but
I doubt that. I saw him in a wedding ring. I know he's married to the Lois on their Earth.
Right. See, now they actually could have pulled off the show that they're doing now with Tyler and I forgot her name, but Tyler and his version of Lois Lane.
Yeah, I can't remember it either.
Tom and Erica could have easily gone into a show named Metropolis. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what we wanted them to do. That's what we thought they were gonna do. We thought that if Smallville had run maybe 6 or 7 seasons max, because it really kind of,
10.
went past its expiration date, and then they launch it to Metropolis. They could have done, many more years if that's what they wanted. But I don't think that's what they wanted at the time. But if anybody could have been the next full-time TV Lois and Clark, it could have been Tom and Erica. I think there's a
I
huge
agree.
missed opportunity there.
Yeah, I think Tom got tired of playing the role too, though. It'd been 10 years. I got the complete set on DVD right here beside me. So it was 10 seasons.
Yeah, you can't blame him. He did do it for a long time, and he's in every episode. So,
Well, I'm assuming that, like myself, tomorrow at this time, we're going to be watching the final few moments of Supergirl and seeing the Crisis kick into high gear. Um, maybe when this is all over in January, we can reconvene right after that Legends episode and talk about where this is going to take us.
oh, absolutely, absolutely, because there's going to be so much to digest by the time we're all through. Because again, they did say that, like we talked about, there'll be cameos that haven't been announced. So there's the stuff that we know that's coming, but there's going to be plenty of stuff that we're not going to know until we see it.
I'm eager to see where they're going to put Burt Ward in this series.
Yeah,
They haven't said he's Robin.
that's
But
right. They just said
they haven't said he's not either.
that's right. That's right. I mean, it's just so much that could happen. We're going to see what choices they do make, and then also, again, with Arrow wrapping up, they're going to take a long, hard look at the lineup when Arrow concludes. And the Flash has consistently been their #1 ratings earner still. So I want to see what they're going to take a chance on next. Stargirl, we know, but I mean,
Yeah.
what are they going to take a chance on next in terms of where it goes from here?
Well, I'm definitely excited, and I'm nervous and trepidatious about it as well, because there's so much that could screw up. This could be rather than the new beginning. This could be the true end of it all. And
Well, it could be.
but they've also said there's a lot of people they have not announced, who've been kind of kept secret. So I'm hoping for some obscurity. I'd love to see Joanna Cameron do a little bit of ISIS again. Now that we know that we had ISIS before, Zari, we have to call her Zari. We can't say ISIS because the bad guys took the name again.
Right, right. No, that would be jaw-dropping if she shows up out of all people, or if they do any of the Superboy actors.
Yeah,
that would be incredible. If they bring Dean Cain in and Terry Hatcher.
Oh, I've been watching Dean Cain's feed like a madman, waiting for him to drop some sort of a hint that something's going to be going on. But so far, I haven't seen it.
That would absolutely be incredible if they did anything like that. If they brought
who's the guy who played Captain Marvel on Saturday mornings?
Jackson Bostwick and John Davies.
Yeah, and they brought in either one of those. Could be pretty cool.
Yeah. If they reached way back into all that would be cool. Now, not only do I want to see Captain Marvel, and we're getting at least a version of Batman, but who else would be cool is if we saw the Metal Men.
That would be, I just picked up some Metal Men in the dollar bin the other day, the old Silver Age Metal Men. So I'm on a Metal Men binge right now. These are the episodes, the issues where they had plastiskin covering so they could meld into the world as human beings.
Right. I've always loved them. So yeah, we might get a glimpse of them. So much it could happen. So I'm like you, man. I'm excited with anticipation, but also it is the beginning of the end on some level. So, we're going to have to try and pick up the pieces come January, one way or the other.
You know what? If I could just flashpoint the whole world, I'd be like, let's have 2010's CW programming, and let's have Julia Schwartz and Jeanette Kahn running DC Comics again.
Oh man,
because the synergy there would be so much creativity going on. We would have the DC streaming network would have everything happening.
Now, I'm going to say this. I know we're wrapping up, but I'm going to say this. I'm just going to put this out there in the ether. But do you know what they're sleeping on big time? I've said it on Twitter a million times. Do you know
a bunch of things, but what do you got?
They're sleeping on the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah.
The Legion of Superheroes is the perfect show for this time. It has diversity. You have people from all different kinds of worlds, which means you have the creative freedom to make up whoever you want.
Yeah.
It has young people. It has relationship angst. It has all kinds of cool powers and superhero action. It's set on Earth in the future, so you don't have to be bound by today's conventions. So what I'm saying is it has multi-audience appeal for, longtime geeks, today's young people, just whatever. There's so much that could be done.
Well, they keep kind of sort of half-assed doing it. I mean, let's look. We had XS on Flash.
Yeah.
But she's not from 1,000 years in the future. We have Brainiac 5 and Saturn Girl and Mon-El on Supergirl.
Supergirl, that's right.
But I don't know that they're 1,000 years in the future either. They might be, but it's not cohesive. So
well, that's the one show I would be excited about if they announced it.
If they did announce that, they could bring back Nora, and she could be like an anchor to bring in the viewers from the Flash who, I know this character. Let's now let's live in her world for a while.
That's right. That's right. That would be written well. That could really go the distance, I think.
I think so too. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on our channel and having this discussion. I've had a great time. Would love to have you back after the crisis to do it again, do a little post-mortem on whatever they get off the ground here. Everybody, please do follow David on Twitter at DT2ComicsChat. Tune in every Tuesday at 12 o'clock noon Central Time for the fastest hour on Twitter, which is the Flash Chat, #FlashChat. Throw in the lightning bolt.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. See, that's why I keep missing it. I go to lunch and I think you're there. 1 o'clock Central Time. You can go to the YouTube channel, watch him do the live stream. He answers your Twitter questions live. I know I've been trying to tune in and get in on it there. Sometimes I'm late and I just throw my answers out anyway. Sometimes I forget to put an A in front of the number. I just kind of reply. So I screw up the whole thread. Sorry about that. It's just what I do. This has been Crisis Preparation. Tune in tomorrow night. Supergirl will be Chapter 1. Batwoman on Monday, Chapter 2, and The Flash this Tuesday, Chapter 3, before they go on hiatus and come back in January to destroy the universe. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. David, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.